You're on notice now. This is being recorded for the ages. 10,000 years from now, people will be watching this video and seeing how sleepy Cassie looks and how smiling Vesselina looks with her wet hair. I love you all. Well, after a long struggle with kidney failure, Freddie died last night at 7:22 with Karima bending over him, chanting Om Namo Bhagavati. It took him a while to die. It wasn't a beautiful passing through. He had trouble breathing. So I gave him some morphine-based medication so he wouldn't feel like he was suffocating if he was still conscious. Then he died. About 7 months ago, we took him in for blood tests because he was acting so sleepy all the time and fatigued. They said he had kidney failure to start him on fluids, and we did. Once a week, we were told, and then that didn't seem to be doing any good, so we took him back for successive blood tests. And his kidneys had gotten worse. So he said we could start him on fluids twice a day. Usually fluids are administered in 100 milliliter doses, 100 cc's. Well, we did that and he seemed better for a long time. And about 3 or 4 months ago, he started getting thinner because he wasn't eating that much. So we started force feeding him baby food in a syringe. Cats love baby food. Some love turkey better than chicken and vice versa. There is no fish baby food that you can feed them. But for the last 2 months, we've been feeding him twice a day because he stopped eating altogether, with a syringe with a long beak. 20 cc's at a time, 60 calories for each jar of baby food. And he seemed to be doing pretty well. And it wasn't like he was a kitten anymore. But he got around. He slept everywhere. But between the fluids and the syringe feedings, he spent a lot of time on our laps being taken care of. And the strange thing is, after I gave him fluids for a while, usually we'd do it just before it got dark, so it was a lot of sun because I needed the light to see where to stick the needle in underneath the skin. He would greet me by the patio door where we did it. We had the fluid set up, hanging from the ceiling. So he came for his fluids every day. He was back there for his fluids. And the same thing for his baby food feeding. He knew when it was. We fed him about the same time every day. when Karima came out of the bedroom, which was usually pretty late, 1:30 or 2 o'clock. And then again around 9 o'clock at night. And even if he had been missing all day, sort of hiding and wanting to be alone, he came out at those times to get his lunch and his supper. It was amazing to see a cat knowing it was time for his fluids, because he could see or feel what the fluids are doing for him, decreasing those things like phosphorus and other substances in his blood that made him feel bad. With kidney disease, I understand it's never that painful. It's just like having a very severe flu, and you don't feel like doing anything. And the fluids can sort of reduce those symptoms, so they feel hydrated. And so we went on for the last 4 months. And it's only in the last week that he hasn't shown any interest in the food, and really not much in the fluids. He just wanted to be left alone. So he died last night. New guy is over there. The other cats ignore him completely. I don't know how they do it. I really don't know. They don't go over and sniff him. If he were alive, they'd be on top of him all the time. So they must know. But they're not showing any way that they really are reacting to it. Now we have 3 cats left out of 14. Time to renew the menagerie, but Cream and I will be dead before they will. And what do you do then? So anyway, we're going to take his body in a few hours to our vet they'll forward him for cremation. And we've already got a cedar box ready for him, which we bought 6 weeks ago with a brass plate that's been engraved. And yet, the strangest thing, just after he died, we laid him on the chair between us, to rest between us. And I put my hand on him. And he felt still alive to me. I felt his energies in my hand, like he was purring. Every time I put my hand on his body, I would feel his energies very strongly, as if he were purring. Karima said she had the same sensation when Kali died, putting her hand on Kali and feeling Kali's life force still in the body. So I don't know. I don't know about these things. Too bad Mark wasn't here to tell us what was going on. And yet today, I feel so happy. Not relieved because he's not suffering anymore. But I just feel happy. And I had a dream last night. I dreamt that Joe Biden had come to a special satsang we had. I've always liked Joe. I've been in Democratic politics for 30 years, been around people that were with him, and they unfailingly reported positive things about him. His detractors always complain about certain things he did in his career. He did this, he did that, things that were seemingly Republican in nature. But the man himself was total kindness and compassion. And a man on the street, not somebody like Trump, who is wicked and evil, but someone that was a mensch that did largely good in his life and was kind of a master of politics. He may still pull through the double bill, the Reconstruction Act, and the other one, the big one, on upping Medicare and Social Security and child care and education. May still pull it through, despite Manchin and my own Senator Sinema. But this leads me to say today, during that dream with Joe Biden, I was in this cockamamie room, and you people were there too. But it was a small group of you. And there were lockers like you would find in the gym all around, chairs and tables, and artificial walls like you would put up at a hotel to separate groups. And I was supposed to sit, and he was sitting next to me. And I don't know what the hell I was talking about finding something about value in your lives. What do you value? How do you value things? But it was pitiful because I didn't feel comfortable there. I was sitting down. Joe got up and left and started farting around with something or other, talking to somebody in the audience, mingling in the crowd. So I got up and I left. And I went to a place where I could see the entire satsang. And I started talking from there. About, are you wasting your life? Before God realization in 2010 or 11, I don't remember which year it was, probably 11. I was more or less wasting my life, even when I was with Robert. Because like Veselina, I kept wondering what I wanted to do, where I wanted to be. And I was very busy looking around, still reading. I had my awakening in 1995. But after 6 months or so, all that I had left was the truth of what I saw then. That consciousness itself was a joke. It was just a concept. It wasn't real. It wasn't permanent. It just flowed and flowed and flowed and flowed. But when I found God realization, when I found God realization inside myself, with a rush of light that I had seen for years, but now 1,000 times the brightness of the sun, and yet it was cool, and an energy so insurmountable, so gargantuan, arising out of my gut, flowing into my chest, and I was helpless to do anything. I couldn't have stopped it if I wanted it, but I didn't want it to stop. I thought it might destroy me, blow me away, but instead, I surrendered to that light and that energy, which seemed to me like God. It had to be God because it was so immense that it was more powerful than anything my personality or body could engender. And afterwards, when I bowed to that presence within me, a gold light would wash down over me, and I would be washed clean of all the things I had fucked up in life and done wrong. So I would feel pure and light. And then I realized later that that thing could be called the life force. God could be called the light force, life force. And I also had the life force in me as God's little brother, so to speak. And after that time, I wasn't wasting time. I was doing exactly what I should be doing. I continued teaching, only this time I specialized in not talking about emptiness and about consciousness being a joke, but rather the grandeur of consciousness, the energy of consciousness, the space of consciousness, and of the life force with which it was twinned. It's only in the last year or two that that part of me has been fading and going back towards examination of Robert's world, of nothingness, of recognizing my separation from consciousness, my separation from the body, where 8 years before that, I had just wanted to walk around saying, I am come alive. I had discovered the life force, I am come alive. But the life force seemed to do its thing with me, and I enjoyed every minute of it. But now I didn't feel it so much anymore. I felt the tinniness of consciousness, the fluidity of it, the impermanence of it, the weakening of the life force in me to an extent. So Nisargadatta once again became a guiding light as he articulated all he had understood about the nature of the life force, consciousness, and beyond that. I know that when Michael used to come and visit us, he wasn't interested in listening to things about Advaita awakening, about nothingness, about the witness. about the tinniness of consciousness. He wanted to hear about the energetic awakening, the Shakti awakening, the finding of God within and of love within. And how impatient he got with me when I talk about Nisargadatta. He was interested only in love, in the energetic awakening. I guess that's the difference between youth and old age. God awakening came to me late, awakening to nothingness, Robert's transcendence, Robert's beyond even the void, came to me 25 years ago. And the energetic awakening, which should have happened first and would have made the awakening to nothingness so much easier, because once you've had God awakening, everything goes easily in life. You feel the guidance of the presence of God in you, or the life force, or the spirit, whatever you want to call it. You feel it all the time. You're no longer in the mundane world because you've woken up to the divine energies itself, the source of life. So what satisfies you in life normally is no longer interesting to you. What's interesting to you is your own inner experiences. That's all that's interested in you. Ramana used to say, what do all men seek? They seek happiness. But he taught about how the happiness that one gets through pursuing objects is always fraught with frustration. Because even after you attain the objects of consciousness, you will eventually lose them. Whether it's a partner, a house, a luxury car, a sports car, power car, an ideal job. At first, it excites you to have the job you want, being Assistant Secretary of State for the state of California, or being a senator. Or being the best welder on the planet, whatever it is. I've wandered from job to job. I had some great jobs after I got out of academia for a while. City planner, administrator. But after a while, I found them wanting. I found them a sham. When I was working as a city planner in Cleveland, we had a meeting with the feds. And what my job had been was to do population projections for all 88 counties in the Cleveland standard metropolitan area. And they wanted to tell the feds that we projected there would be 2.3 million people by 1990. I didn't see any such thing, any possible way. I had about 15 different models that I looked at, and not one of them got near that. And so when the head of our planning commission, talking to the Fed, said, I'm sure Ed would agree with that figure, I said, no. And I quit just a little bit later and began my odyssey of becoming a wandering monk, so to speak, even though I was not in any established tradition. I went to the desert for several months in a tent, communing with the cactuses that kept biting at my ankles. And I finally left when it was 114 degrees and I couldn't take the daytime exposed temperature anymore. And then I went to Rochester, New York to be with Philip Keplow, who wrote The Three Pillars of Zen, which I still believe is the best book on Zen I've ever read. I read it many, many times because he talks about the experiences of certain students and saints in the past on their heading towards awakening. But the thing is, compared to the more mystical religions like Advaita or Hinduism or Christian mysticism, the awakenings of Zen are not so much. All mystical awakenings and experiences are regarded as illusion, and only immersion in the mundane world and acceptance of the mundane world and acceptance of the mundane mind is regarded as liberation. I don't see it that way. I see as true liberation coming first through God realization, feeling the uprising energies in your body and playing with them until they explode inside of you and you feel removed from the mundane world into the divine world. And it's divine in the sense that you always feel the blessing of the life force, which is in you as your twin, so to speak, but your grown-up twin, your powerful twin, who's always with you and showing you the way. And you, the little twin, like that movie with that short guy and Arnold Schwarzenegger, and it was called Twins. They're both supposed to be identical twins. I had a Schwarzenegger twin who was God, and me, a little guy that was feeling these divine energies going through me all the time. Energies after energies. And I know that people looked at me differently. But I couldn't make out what they were seeing, what they felt. Because all that I felt when I looked within was emptiness, the sense of presence, the presence of both God and myself, the energy, so to speak. But after a while, I saw the energy disappearing to be replaced by apprehending the life force itself within me. which was no longer an energetic presence, but was what I usually called me. And now I would call it the life force. And probably the life force wouldn't be an apt name for it because I no longer felt an energetic presence associated with it. I felt the humming of being. It was like every moment of the day and night, it was humming to me, and I was aware of the humming of my essence, the life force. And I was aware because of the presence of consciousness. But that brings up the obvious question is, I feel a distance between me and God, the life force. I feel a distance between my body and me. So what am I? This witness that is witnessing that all the saints talk about. What is it? What is it? And I just kept searching and searching and searching. And no matter what I tried, I could not apprehend the searcher. When I go within and go deep, the deeper into my consciousness that I went, because I was following Robert's command, dive deep within yourself. Dive deep within that darkness to find peace. And when I found that I was diving deep, I always came to a point where I could go no further. And instead of something would happen and I would flip. And at that moment of flipping, I would become the whole universe. I would become the totality of the witnessed consciousness. This is the Brahman state. Many of you have experienced it. But I don't know whether you can reach it consciously or not by going deep and being flipped around. And not everybody does it the same way that I did it. But that witness cannot be seen. It has a different dimension. It's what Western philosophers call the noumenal self. The thing in itself, der Ding an sich, as the German philosophers called it, Kant, der Ding an sich, the thing in itself. The Frank in himself, the Bernadette in herself, the Cassie in herself, the Vesselina in herself, versus the world we feel enmeshed in. The world of getting up and brushing our teeth, eating breakfast, getting ready for work, and going through that bullshit consciousness thing all day long, only to fall to sleep restfully or unrestfully at the end of a long day fucking around in consciousness. You know, even after a while, even after the divine realization takes place, and after that realization courses through your body and mind for a number of months or years, even that begins to be left behind because the energies ease. The delight eases. And as Robert used to say, after 30,000 days, 100,000 meals, brushing your teeth 100,000 times, no matter how good you feel, do you really want to continue to doing that? Or do you want to find something deeper than this consciousness? Even with the explosion of the divine within, you know it's but a show. And do you not want to know what you really are? Not the phenomenal self, not the self of the explosion of bliss, or the mundane self of the day-to-day life of being a worker, or even a doctor, or an Indian chief that goes warring on the US Army. But why the fuck am I doing this at all? Who the hell am I, caught in this play, whatever play you're in, of being Sitting Bull or Vesselina, an incipient doctor? Or Bernadette sitting on her couch, coming here and saying, why the fuck am I coming here? And saying, well, I know why, because I feel good. But that's no excuse, Bernadette. And Ian knows. Ian's on the verge. Ian knows that consciousness itself is a vast emptiness signifying nothing. And although he'd like to have the God realization, he thinks maybe he did have it in the past at some time or other, and it just blew right by him. Doesn't know whether he wants to experience it again or not, or go for the noumenal self altogether and just get the show over with. I'm getting one email after another of students from my past that watch my videos, and I don't know it because they don't communicate with me. And they write to me, email to me, or use the website inquiry thing to get a message to me that they've had this energetic experience, usually filled with energy, 1,000 beams of light, with a lot of laughing and waking up to the divine life, saying how much they appreciate it, how much they thank me. But it's not the only awakening. It's only half of the show. But it's one well worth getting because it makes the second part so much easier. Not only that, one of my idols, Ramakrishna, had an awakening to God, to Kali, relatively early in life. I think he was in his 50s. But he had had little openings that way for years and years because he was soaked in devotion. That was his path, not trying to understand, but devotion. And he had many, many teachers, and he mastered supposedly all the teachings in a very short period of time. And when the invited teacher came to him and says, I'll show you the way, he eagerly joined the guy in his teachings, girl, I forget which. And having mastered supposedly the Advaita teachings, he said, I don't like it. I'm going back to worshiping Kali, the loving mother, and staying in the divine. So that's why I've emphasized so much awakening to the divine, but I no longer have the pressingness to do this, because I myself are no longer that infatuated with the divine. I'm infatuated with understanding, the witness. And that's what's being revealed to me over and over again. The nature, you might say, of nothingness, of the formless dimension from which I came and which we all come. And to understand that what we believe we are is an illusion. And Nisargadatta points out the nature of the illusion. He says, none of you have ever really witnessed your birth. You hear about it from your parents. They talk about what it was like to give birth to you, how long the gestation was, how long the birth process itself was, how painful it was, how it happened. To you, that could all be bullshit because you weren't there. You really weren't there. You weren't there until consciousness began developing to an extent inside of you that you had the concept that you were. But this concept becomes eroded if you're born into a family where you're not valued, where you're sort of ignored. Because the God consciousness in you, that awareness in you, never gets the feeling of being loved. And without that feeling of being loved, you go through life feeling loved. And that's why you search for it in religion and spirituality. You're searching for that feeling of being valuable as an entity. That self is worthwhile. That's what happened to me when I felt the love of another so deeply. I exploded because I finally felt the love of a woman that I so much needed when I was 6 months old or a year old or 2 years old. I was made whole as a human. And finding that love, I felt that love within myself and saw that that love within myself for her was really my creation. She was the trigger for it. But the love was in me for her. I created the object. I loved that object. And the love was all me. And I hear poor Eddie crying out. I think he's lonely because his big brother's gone. He doesn't know how to handle it. He's just crying out behind me. He won't go over to Freddie. But he's lonely, I can tell. He never cries out like that otherwise. So, even when you're God realized, you're told you have to go further. You have to know the noumenal self, that from which consciousness and the life forces arises and creates your life. You have to go back into that invisible self, that non-existent self, that nothingness, because that's where you're going to go anyway when you die. And you can only really do that if you've been fulfilled in life. Otherwise, you'll continue to cling to life. So that's why God realization is so necessary. And like me, the way to get it is through love. Love. If I could only have all of the emails, I might send them to somebody from Steve Eckhart and have Jay read the emails about his family life with 14 cats or 11 cats, I forget what it is. The raccoons and skunks in his yard. The insects in his house, including a 2-year-old nest of wasps between the screen door and the main door that his wife feeds with honey when it rains because they can't fly out for food. Or the love that Jay has for his cat and his wife. Or the love Frank has because of his life of taking care of people. Only somebody that loves life can continue to do this when you're 78. Or the love that Vesselina feels, too. Her love for Michael, her love for humanity, and her love for herself. So, to each of you, you've got a different path. Some are plagued by whether they should go for God realization or the Advaita realization of the origin of everything and nothingness. But there's one sure thing you can do, is to love yourself and to love another. I was so much hoping for that to happen with Michael. When he went to Vesselina, I thought they would both explode in love and reach God. And Ian and Cassie have finally stopped fighting after many years, so I guess they're getting close. Close to God realization and perhaps the final realization. And there are other things too. that are always good to get you on your way. And that's doing introspection or self-inquiry. Not the way Robert taught about following the I thought, because the I thought always just melts into emptiness. Once you learn how to isolate the thoughts where they become objects in your consciousness, your field of consciousness, and you watch the I thought, it always disappears into the empty darkness, like a filter between you and the ultimate state. But rather, feel. Go into feeling instead of observation. And start feeling your body. Relax. Fall backwards into your sense of self. It's in behind you. And start feeling your body instead of being locked into your eye consciousness and brain consciousness. Go lower. Feel your gut and the churning of your intestines there. Feel your breath. Feeling coming and going of air. The expansion of your chest. Lowering of your diaphragm. Lowering of your diaphragm, pressing downwards on your innards. Close your eyes and move your head and feel the emptiness in your head compared with the emptiness outside. See the light within compared with the nothingness deep inside your body. Feel the life light, or see the light in your third eye, your forehead, if you want, and concentrate on it, but it's just an interesting diversion. It's not necessary to see the light of consciousness and have it explode and glow, or have it expand and go everywhere. It's not necessary. The awakening of love is. And go inside yourself looking for that sense of me. And it's a hopeless search, because even if you found that sense of me, it doesn't last. It fades out of your feeling vision, out of your awareness. And you begin to be able to distinguish between consciousness and your awareness of that consciousness inside. So then you can become aware of your awareness, how it arises, how it floats around in the vastness of your consciousness, and why it seems to do that, what moves it. And usually it's the mind. The mind gets interested in something and focuses on that part of consciousness within you, whether it be your sense of presence or the energies within, or whether it be thinking about another person that you love and feeling love for that person, or whether it be an honest diving within just to find out what you are at your depths. Once you find God, the unfolding takes place by itself. And before that, you feel like a cork floating around on an ocean, wondering, who the fuck am I? What the fuck am I supposed to do, Esselina? You have to go deeper than your thoughts. You have to go deeper than your interests. You have to go deeper than your concepts about what relationships are supposed to be like. You have to find your own heart and the love there. Wherever it's directed, whether it's towards your family of cats and wasps, or whether it's your significant other, or a hidden girlfriend or boyfriend, or a majestic tree in the forest near your house. If any of you live near a forest, that is. Those of you living in Toronto have forests around you. Those of you living in most of California have forests around you somewhere. And certainly those who live in Colorado have forests around them. Do you have a favorite tree or place in that forest where you feel really at home? I remember one time that Dia was here. She found a cricket in the laundry room of the hotel where she was staying. And the cricket was missing two legs. So she took the cricket outside and put it in some bushes near the hotel where it wouldn't be stepped on or killed. And the next day, she went down to retrieve her laundry. And the cricket was there again. The same cricket missing two legs. She saw the cricket as this creature that needed help, but also had God in it. And she brought the cricket back to her apartment in the hotel and fed it and worshiped it until it died. She enlisted my aid in bringing the cricket back into life because she loved it so. Well, I told her bringing back the dead wasn't part of my grueling repertory. That it probably could be done, but not with the tools that I had. And I believe it can be done. That there can be these dead people brought back to life that aren't zombies. It does happen. You hear from it time to time. Being pronounced dead, and people come back with stories of the afterlife. But that's not what I'm talking about. I mean, really being dead. And brought back to life. But I noticed how much she worshipped that little creature, and how much I admired her for loving that intensely. Because that's the kind of love that the life force loves, that the life force lavishes realizations upon that person that was totally devotional, like Dia. The same thing with Angela. She is like, or she was, a worshipful angel who loved so hard that she was filled with ecstatic bliss day after day, month after month, and wanted to be just left alone in that bliss, but always being forced by circumstances to move somewhere or other. She was an angel, but something happened, and the energies just did something to her. And she left. I don't understand all of these things. I'm a simple guy living in a shitty hot desert where there are no trees we're speaking of. And I haven't learned how to worship cactuses yet. Okay, I've spoken enough. It's a tough day for me. I got up 45 minutes before satsang and rushed to finish my coffee before satsang started. But since I had my camera on, I had to turn it off because I didn't want people seeing me break my own rules about drinking coffee during satsang. I love you all with all my heart. You all mean so much to me, each and every one of you. Some more than others because I've had more contact with them. For example, Michael living with me off and on for years. And Vesselina mainly because I speak to her quite frequently because of her relationship with Michael and hear her complaining about Michael, or I've had enough with this guy, or, oh, I feel okay with him now. And I've had Michael and Vesselina in joint conversation with me and Karima many times. I feel very close to Michael. He's like my son. And he's going through hard times now with his mother being very ill with cancer. And Vesselina's having her own problems dealing with her career. Her tests coming up next Tuesday. 2 tests she's failed before. And I wish her all the luck in the world. And I tell her, please cheat. Do whatever is necessary to pass the fucking tests. Because all the obstacles that the medical profession, no matter what state it's in, what country it's in, It's not a pleasant process. It's a process of groveling and obeying the rules and going through all the hoops that they, and it's a process of weeding out rogues from people that tend to follow the rules. By now, Frank has escaped the days of playing by the rules, but I bet you that's what he did to get through medical school. He jumped through the hoops without making waves. Or if he did make waves, he quickly covered up the waves so he wouldn't be called on it. And then there are the two people, Ian and Cassie, who come here at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning to come to satsang. Can you imagine that for years? Waking up 3 o'clock to come to satsang. I did it when I was in a monastery, but I had to. If I didn't wake up at 3 o'clock, they'd wake me up at 3 o'clock and make me go out and shovel snow. So I learned it was better to get up before the monks got up and run out to the zendo and meditate because they left me alone. So I was considered a very advanced student because I would, when they wake up in the morning, they'd see me in the zendo meditating. They thought it was lust for self-realization, but it was really to avoid shoveling snow that time in the morning. And I was so happy after they finished the snow that they'd trudge up to the zendo and join me. And the first thing we had was hot tea in little teeny cups before we had meditation. But I was so frozen in the morning, it was really, really easy to meditate and not move. We all had to wear uniforms of black hakamas around our waists and black robes over it. And the colder it got, the more clothes we wore underneath it, until it seemed like we were all Chinese or North Korean soldiers with thick pads of clothes under our uniforms. Another reason to do it is because a jikijitsu monk would go around the zendo with a stick, hitting people if they were asleep or they were wavering in any way or they were moving too much. And the padding helped. So that's my story. Story of being a fuck up, but realizing God, and of having the luck in my life to run into Robert Adams, who I immediately selected as my guru, or chose as my guru. And after 2 or 3 years, knew that he was the one, and who I loved and took care of, spent a lot of time with, went to lunch with, always going to satsang and driving him to satsang and home. So after a long fuck up life, I found him. And then 15 years later, a love object whom I loved to the extent that I found God. And after I found God, no need to search anymore, because The guru was wakened in me. Okay, time for comment. Time for questions.
Gee, I just want to say if there's some way to share the Steve Eckert emails with maybe Mark, we could get them to Ian and maybe to me and whomever would want to read them. That I think would be extraordinary. And
Well, I'll tell you what, I'll email them to you if I have your,
okay, yeah, okay, sure,
and you can read them
okay,
as part of one each satsang or something.
sure,
Like that.
absolutely. And I just want to share one other thing that everyone needs to capture what Veselina posted is those your URLs, however you pronounce it.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
Because they are, I have them now.
Quiet.
So
Veselina found what she calls a pirate site that lists hundreds of Krishna Das tapes, and she's